again.
Hello again.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the video.
Haha. So what's this video about then?
Second part, the history of Verteuil sur Charente. When editing the first video, we realised that there was lots of additional history and it was really too big for the video on its own. We've made an extra video just for you, really. You can listen to the history of Verteuil. It's quite an important place in French history, and a lot of famous historical figures have gone through Verteuil. So really, that's what it's about, isn't it?
I did a voiceover for St Medard, Chemin Dam, the Moulin de Verteuil, Maison de Sénéchal, and what else did I do?
I don't know.
The convent. There's lots of interesting facts.
Yeah, I've read the bits on the chateau, the interior, the architecture, and some other bits as well.
So I'll put the links of where we got the information from
In the description.
in the description.
That'll do.
Yeah. So I hope you like the video.
Yeah.
Verteuil sur Charente. The castle is mentioned in 1080 as the property of the Lord of La Rochefoucauld. Since then, the castle has always belonged to a member of the family. The first successful siege is mentioned in 1135, when Count Volgrin II of Angoulême took it from Aymar II de La Rochefoucauld. Hostilities continued between their descendants, William VI of Angoulême, who died in 1179, and Guy IV de La Rochefoucauld, but ceased in 1170, when they both attended the consecration of the church of St Armand de Boix. King Louis VII, 1120 to 1180, and Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine, 1122 to 1204, are said to have stayed in Verteuil in 1137. Eleanor's mother was a La Rochefoucauld, and due to the instability of the country, the young couple only stayed in safe, well-fortified places during their journey from Bordeaux and Paris. King Philip VI, 1293 to 1350, stayed at the castle in 1332. Due to the Franco-English hostilities, the castle played an increasingly important role at the time. During the Hundred Years' War, by the Treaty of Brittany in 1360, it was handed over to the English, who were not able to take possession of it until a year later. The castle was reluctantly ceded to Edward III of England by the Regent of Guyenne, Jean Chandos, on October the 25th, 1361. King Edward III had brought the keeper's brother to the castle and threatened to behead him unless it surrendered immediately. 9 French troops under the Duke of Bouillon and Godfrey III de la Rochefoucauld besieged the castle in 1380, but it did not yield until 5 years later, after the siege that damaged it. The English later regained it, and finally in 1442, King Charles VII, 1403 to 1461, reconquered it for good. The La Rochefocaulds, who had played a major role in the fight against the English, now began to ravage Angoulême during the Praguerie revolt. Charles VII returned, and this time destroyed the castle, partly setting it on fire. However, the stones were recovered and the castle rebuilt on the site of the feudal castle built in the 11th century. In 1446, Guillaume de la Rochefoucauld obtained the king's pardon as well as the right to rebuild a defence, a wall and 2 defence towers so that it could once again become a protective building for the villagers of Verteuil. Under this pretext, they made it one of the best defended castles in France. The walls were restored and reinforced using the latest architectural techniques. The Castellany of Verteuil was erected in a barony in the 15th century. It then extended over 16 parishes and included 62 fiefs in its sphere of influence. Francis I of La Rochefoucauld, died 1541, was the godfather of King Francis I, 1494 to 1547, who visited Verteuil in 1516. Anne of Polignac, widow of Francis II of La Rochefoucauld, received Emperor Charles V, 1500 to 1558, there on December the 5th, 1539. His maternal aunt was the wife of the historian Philip de Comines. She made many improvements to the castle and had the famous library built. In 1558, Henry II, 1515 to 1559, stayed at Verteuil with his son Charles, Duke of Orleans, 1550 to 1574, and his daughter Elizabeth, 1545 to 1568, the future wife of Philip II of Spain, 1527 to 1598. Wars of Religion and the Bourbon Dynasty. Francis III of the Francis III de la Rochefoucauld, it's 1521 to 1572, became the brother-in-law of the Protestant Louis, Prince of Condé, 1530 to 1569, and in 1560 organised a meeting at Verteuil between Condé and Cardinal Georges de Armagnac, 1501 to 1585, legate of Pope Pius IV, in an attempt to prevent further conflict. 2 years later, Francis III sided with the Protestants. In 1567, the Sixth National Synod of the Reformed Church of France was held at the chateau, and the following year it became a rallying point for Huguenot troops coming to the aid of La Rochelle, which was besieged by the Catholics. The castle was visited by the future Henry IV, 1553 to 1610, Catherine de' Medici, 1519 to 1589, and her daughter Marguerite, 1553 to 1615, as well as by Louis XIII, 1601 to 1643, Anne of Austria, 1601 to 1666, and the Queen Mother Mary de' Medici, 1575 to 1642. In 1650, Francois VI, Duke of La Rochefoucauld, 1613 to 1680, gathered more than 2,000 knights, whom he led to Bordeaux to help the nobles of the Second Fronde. Shortly afterwards, Charles de la Porte, Marshal of France and Duke of the Mielleraye, 1602 to 1664, attacked and took the castle with the royal troops. He destroyed the orangery and partially demolished the castle. The walls of the north wing were seriously damaged, the towers dismantled, the drawbridge removed, and the deep moat that defended the northwest of the castle partially filled. The castle remained habitable, and in 1651 the Prince of Conti stayed there, but he was forced to withdraw by the Queen's Guard regiment. They installed a garrison of 150 men in the village of Verteuil. Francis VI was exiled by Louis XIV, 1638 to 1715, after the revolt. In 1652, Francis VI returned to the Chateau de Verteuil, where he spent most of his time writing his memoirs, until 1659. His return to favour in 1662 was followed by the publication of his Maxims in 1665. Francis died in Paris in 1680, but was buried in the Franciscan chapel of Verteuil, founded in 1470 by his ancestors, Jean, 16th Lord of La Rochefoucauld and 13th Lord of Verteuil. All of Jean's successors were buried in this chapel until the start of the Terror in 1793. There were some distinguished visitors to Verteuil during the reign of Louis XV, 1710 to 1774. Elizabeth Farnese, 1692 to 1766, the second wife of Philip V of Spain, 1683 to 1746, spent some time at Verteuil.
The convent of Verteuil-sur-Charente, or Le Couvent des Cordeliers. Founded in 1471 by Jean de la Rochefoucauld to receive the burials of his family, the convent was occupied until 1793 by Franciscan monks. This convent was built on the site of a very old chaplaincy whose chapel was integrated into the new construction, forming the north side chapel near the church choir. During the Revolution, the convent was sold as national property and divided into 4 lots. The complex currently includes the church choir, the chapel, the sacristy with the infirmary upstairs, the prison, the pavilion, the boarding school, the barn, and the cellar.
Architecture. The present castle, with its 5 conical towers and its watchtower topped with slate roofs, began to be built in the 15th century, and it has been modified and extended several times since. A park was laid out in the 19th century, through which a wide avenue led visitors to the main gate. This gate is that of the square central tower with the pyramidal roof. This square keep is the main remaining part of the medieval structure. The present building is designed on a triangular plan. The large tower at the end of the triangle is the medieval gatehouse, with wings extending on either side. An isolated tower, now converted into a library, separates the wall to the east. All the roofs are made of slate. They are pepper pot for the towers, 2-sided for the buildings, pyramidal for the entrance pavilion, and vaulted for the chapel. The buildings to the south-east are barely affected by the 19th century restoration, with the exception of the chapel. The walls of the 12th century tower have mostly survived, partly rebuilt in the 15th century, and there are traces of a Romanesque chapel. The park was redesigned in the 19th century, surrounded by dry stone walls with several entrances. These have since been removed, as have the lush 18th century gardens, but some traces of them remain in the form of box trees, paths, 2 terrace ponds, and a rockery. Interior. An inventory was made in 1728 after the death of Duke Francis VIII. The library contains 1,069 works. The master bedroom contains an elegant bed with sumptuous ornaments of purple velvet embroidered with gold and silver, armchairs upholstered in the same velvet, a large Turkish carpet in an alcove, a walnut table, and other objects. The architect renovated the interior of the 14th century tower and transformed it into the library for the La Rochefoucauld family in 1893. He designed it as an intellectual chapel to display the memorabilia of the famous author. Andrian Karbowski contributed to the decoration of the room by painting on the walls. Hippolyte's son, Count Aymery de la Rochefoucauld, continued to collect his ancestors' memorabilia, transforming the castle into a kind of family museum. He redecorated the chapel and added stained glass windows.
Le Moulin de Verteuil. Sat at the foot of the chateau on the banks of the Charente River is an old 17th century mill, which until recently was still in working order, with the flour being used to make the bread sold by the restaurant Le Moulin de Verteuil. It played a vital role in the village's economy, used for grinding grain, but it was unfortunately closed and is up for sale.
Protection. The castle was classified as a historical monument on March the 31st, 1966. This classification also concerns facades, roofs, and frames. The site was completely classified on November the 19th, 2010. It is presumed that the castle, the inner courtyard, and the land adjoining to the north contain archaeological remains.
St Medard. St Medard was born in Picard, France, in around 456 AD to a pious and noble family. Legend says when he was a child, St Medard was once sheltered from the rain by an eagle who hovered over him. He was known for his compassion, and it is said that when he met a destitute blind man, he gave him part of his own clothes. The weather legend concerning Medardus is similar to St Swithin in England. The French rhyme is Quand il pleut à la Saint Medard, il pleut 40 jours plus tard. If it rains on Medardus Day, it rains for 40 more days. St Medard Day is the 8th of June. He died in 560 AD. Chemin des Dames means Way of the Ladies. Chemin des Dames meets the Rue du Temple, the street running above the church. It was apparently constructed to allow women to attend church without getting their dresses muddy, as the main street often became very dirty, especially when animals were herded through it. The Sénéchalerie Verteuil-sur-Charente. La Sénéchalerie. In the Middle Ages, this place marked the entrance to the medieval town, home of the Seneschal of the Châtellenie of Verteuil, 16th to the 17th century. In France, the term châtellenie were used for a new territory which gathered around a motte and bailey castle built by a member of the rural aristocracy after the failure of central power. Under the old regime, the seneschal exercises the functions of judge and is responsible for high, low, and medium justice. This hereditary office nevertheless remains payable and is granted to him and his family by the de la Rochefoucauld family.
The French Revolution. At the outbreak of the French Revolution, in 1789 to 1799, relations between the La Rochefoucauld family and the inhabitants of Verteuil were excellent. According to the Marquis d'Amondio, nothing would have happened to the chateau if it had not been for the Ruffec Committee of Public Safety and the Convention Deputy Gilbert Rome, to whom is attributed the auto-da-fe of most of the Verteuil archives, as well as 30 portraits. An accidental fire in 1793 destroyed the great gallery that connects the chapel to the north tower, and the west face of the great central tower was badly damaged. The fire spread along the roofs and turrets of the northwest wing, and the upper part of the north tower was also burned. The chapel was ransacked and the flames destroyed its facade and part of its north wall. The crypt was not damaged. Most of the floors and fireplaces of the castle, as well as the doors, windows, and woodwork, irreparably destroyed. After the Revolution, Hippolyte de la Rochefoucauld, 1804 to 1863, who had been minister plenipotentiary in Germany and Florence, bought the castle. It was renovated at the beginning of the 19th century. The work was undertaken by the Lavelions in the Romantic style, fashionable at the time of the Bourbon Restoration after 1815. Window ornaments and false arrow slits were added, as well as 2 towers on the south facade. They also added a flamboyant balustrade and dormer windows and made alterations to part of the chapel. During the Second Empire, 1852 to 1870, further changes were made, mainly to the interior. Hippolyte de la Rochefoucauld brought a fine collection of furniture and a pair of Venetian-style glass candlesticks when he retired there. He had the grand stone staircase restored. Influenced by Eugene Valois-le-Duc, he decided to transform the large East Tower into a library. He blocked the old openings in the old walls and made large windows in them. He ordered a copy of the statue of the author of Maxims by Didier Debut placed on the front of the Paris City Hall. His son, Aimeri, and his grandson, Gabriel, continued the work. Aimeri de la Rochefoucauld, it's 1843 to 1928, inspired Proust, who knew him well, to draw on the traits of several of his characteristics. During the Second World War, 1939 to 1945, the castle housed French troops and refugees from Alsace-Lorraine who arrived in 1940. For several months, it was partially occupied by German units. In 1949, resistance fighters from the Maquis hid there. Some extremely interesting archaeological discoveries have been made since the war. The research began by Count Gabriel de la Rochefoucauld, interrupted during the war, uncovered buried parts of the castle dating from the 12th and 13th centuries, including the room that housed the drawbridge mechanism. A 12th century staircase was discovered leading to the lower chapel in very good condition, dating from the 11th century, the existence of which was unknown before 1958. Other traces of building foundations have been found. The castle, furnished and inhabited, remained the family property of the La Rochefoucauld family and belonged to Anne de la Rochefoucauld, Marquis de Amodio, who was the founder in 1958 of the Heritage Protection Association, Vieilles Maisons Françaises, until her death in 1980. The Marquis de Amodio was succeeded at Verteuil by Count Sixte de la Rochefoucauld Estissac, who died in 2023. In August 2020, the castle is officially put up for sale. It had belonged to the La Rochefoucauld family for almost a millennium. The sale that took place on January the 5th, 2021, is followed by that of part of the furniture of the castle in 230 lots. The Hunt of the Unicorn Tapestries. 7 tapestries of the Hunt of the Unicorn are mentioned in 1680 in an inventory of the Persian possessions of Duke Francis VI. Embroidered around symbolic themes, they seem to have been made on the occasion of a marriage, probably that of Anne of Brittany, 1477 to 1514, with Louis XII, 1462 to 1515. Their numbers would have once decorated the sky of most of the tapestries. The 1728 inventory mentions 5 tapestries of the Hunt of the Unicorn hanging in the main bedroom of the castle. The tapestries, which were then just over 200 years old, were in an advanced state of wear. 2 other tapestries were mentioned in a lower hall near the chapel, currently serving as a storage place for furniture. They are described as 2 tapestries of the unicorn, torn in several places. During the French Revolution, the Ruffec Surveillance Committee decided that the old tapestries of the castle could be preserved, since they bore no royal insignia. It seems that the insignia were cut out so that these tapestries would not be destroyed by the mob when the castle was pillaged in 1793. They were taken by peasants who used them to protect their potatoes from frost and to cover their espalier trees. Count Hippolyte rediscovered the tapestries in the 1850s, used by a peasant as protection for his vegetables in his barn. After being restored in 1856, they were hung in a salon of the chateau. Xavier Barbier de Montault saw the tapestries at Verteuil around 1880 and declared that although they were somewhat restored, they are of incomparable freshness and grace. In 1923, these tapestries were sold to John D. Rockefeller Jr. and shipped to New York, who in 1937 donated them to the Cloisters Museum. where they are now on display in the medieval galleries.
Thanks for watching the video.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope you enjoyed it. There'll be another one on next week for you.
If you enjoyed the video, can you click on the like button, thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share, comment. That's about it. And all the other gubbins.
And all the other gubbins, that'd be great.
Yeah.
If you could do that.
Anything else?
Yeah, if you've made it this far and you want to have a bit of a binge watch, we're going to put 2 videos behind us now that are actually on the end screen, and that will be St Armand de Blois and
The first
Verteuil video. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's about it. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
And see you on the next one.
See you next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.